Starting today, the apartment is your sister's. My father's voice cut straight through the string quartet music and the clink of champagne flutes, loud enough for every one of the 43 guests in the banquet room to hear. He raised his glass toward my sister and her fiancé at the head table and smiled the smile of a man who has never once questioned whether he was doing something wrong. Consider it our engagement gift to the happy couple. Olivia and Marcus need a real home to start their life. You're 30 years old, Leah. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet. 43 people turned to look at me. I had been living in that apartment for 6 years. I had painted every wall, refinished the hardwood floors with my own hands, built the kitchen shelves from scratch because the original ones were rotting. My father had rented it to me at a discount he constantly reminded me about, as though allowing his own daughter a place to live was an act of extraordinary generosity. And now, in front of his entire social circle, his church friends, his golf buddies, and my mother's book club, he had just handed it to my younger sister like a gift card. My mother was watching me from across the room, her smile frozen in place, her eyes doing the thing they always did, silently begging me not to make a scene, not to embarrass the family, not to ruin Olivia's beautiful night. Olivia herself didn't even look at me. She was already leaning into Marcus, laughing at something, her engagement ring catching the chandelier light. Before I tell you what I found on my father's laptop 2 days later, and what I did with it that changed everything, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know how far this reaches. The room was holding its breath. I could feel it, that particular stillness that happens when a crowd collectively decides to witness something. They expected tears. They expected me to set down my glass too hard or to say something sharp that my father could later describe as hysterical. My mother's left hand had found the back of a chair. She was gripping it. I smiled. That's wonderful, I said, clearly enough that the people nearest to me could hear. I crossed the room, kissed Olivia on the cheek, shook Marcus's hand, and told them both congratulations. Then I went back to my spot near the hors d'oeuvres table and spent the next 2 hours being the easiest person in the room. My father found me near the end of the night, that particular satisfaction radiating off him the way heat comes off asphalt in July. He put his hand on my shoulder, heavy and deliberate. I knew you'd be mature about it, he said. You've always been the sensible one, Leah. Olivia needs this more than you do. You understand family. I looked him in the eye. Of course, Dad, I said. I completely understand. He had no idea what I understood. I want to explain something about the situation I had been living inside for 4 years, because what came next only makes sense if you understand the foundation it was built on. My father owns 3 dry cleaning locations in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. He built them from one storefront starting in the early 90s, and they are legitimately good businesses, steady, recession-resistant, the kind of thing that prints modest but reliable money year after year. When I graduated with a business degree at 26, he sat me down at the kitchen table and told me the operations were becoming too much for him to manage alone. He was 61. He had a bad hip. He needed someone he could trust. Your family, he said. You understand what this business means to us. I need you to come in and take over the day-to-day. We'll figure out the compensation. For now, think of it as an investment in your future. When I retire, this all comes to you and your sister. I believed him. I came in. For 4 years I managed payroll, vendor contracts, equipment leasing, employee scheduling, customer complaints, health inspections, and the quarterly tax filings for all 3 locations. I negotiated a supply deal that saved him $11,000 a year. I implemented a customer loyalty software system that increased repeat business by 22% at the Westerville location alone. I worked 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. My official pay, $14 an hour, classified as a part-time bookkeeping assistant. No overtime. No benefits. No equity agreement in writing. Because my father said those things would come in time and I was family and family didn't need contracts. My sister Olivia, 4 years younger, had never worked a single shift at any of the 3 locations. She had a fine arts degree, a boyfriend who sold commercial real estate, and a lifestyle funded by the quiet monthly transfers my parents made into her account that I was not supposed to know about but knew about because I did the books. I had known for about 8 months before the engagement party that something was shifting. My father had started bringing Marcus around the stores, showing him things, explaining the supplier relationships I had spent years building. Marcus was polite and attentive and had absolutely no operational experience. But he had an MBA and belonged to the right country club, and my father liked him with a specific, uncomplicated enthusiasm he had never quite directed at me. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that my father was a man of his word and 4 years of 60-hour weeks had to mean something. Then came the night of the engagement party, and the apartment, and the 43 witnesses, and the smile I did not let slip. 2 days later, I was in the back office of the Westerville location doing the monthly reconciliation when my father's personal laptop chimed from across the desk. He had stepped out to talk to a vendor and left it open, which he did constantly because he trusted me completely. He had always trusted me completely. That was the thing about my father. His confidence in his own control was so total that it never occurred to him to be careful. The notification was a reply in an email thread. The subject line was simply, "Transition Plan." I should not have clicked it. I clicked it. The thread was between my father, my mother, my sister, and Marcus. It went back 4 months. My father had written the original email the week after Marcus proposed, while I was sitting 20 feet away in that same office, renegotiating a dry cleaning solvent contract that saved him $800 a month. His words, "Once Marcus is settled in and up to speed on operations, we can restructure Leah's role. She's been useful, but honestly we've been carrying her longer than makes sense. She doesn't have the personality for growth. Marcus brings connections she simply can't. We need to transition her out gracefully before the wedding, maybe offer her a small severance so she doesn't get difficult. The apartment thing should soften the blow since she's paying almost nothing for it anyway." My mother had replied with a single line, "Just make sure she doesn't find out until we're ready." My sister's reply, 3 days later. "Honestly, Marcus thinks she's been overpaid as it is, lol. He says a real bookkeeper would cost half. Can we make this happen before the holidays? I want to announce the apartment at the party." I sat there in the glow of the laptop screen and read the thread 3 times. There is a specific kind of pain that comes not from surprise but from confirmation. I had suspected. Some part of me had always suspected. But reading it in their own words, "Carrying her, doesn't have the personality, make sure she doesn't find out," that was different. That was the ground going solid under 4 years of fog. I didn't cry. I didn't close the laptop and pretend I hadn't seen it. I took out my phone and photographed every single email in that thread. Then I went back to the reconciliation spreadsheet, finished it, and locked up the store at closing time. That was the night the daughter stopped working for them. The forensic accountant woke up. Here is what 4 years of doing the books for 3 small businesses gives you. An almost complete picture of every financial decision ever made. I knew where the money came from and where it went. I knew which expenses were legitimate and which ones had grown creative over time. And now, with the email thread sitting in my phone, I had a reason to look at everything differently. I did not quit. I did not confront them. I went back to work the following Monday and every Monday after that. I smiled at my father. I gave Marcus a tutorial on the inventory software he had asked about. I ate Sunday dinner at my parents' house and helped my mother choose centerpieces for the engagement party venue. I was so easy to be around that my father once commented to my mother, within earshot of me, that he was relieved I had taken the apartment situation so well. Meanwhile, I was building a case. The first thing I found was the overtime. Ohio wage law is not complicated. Any employee working more than 40 hours a week is entitled to overtime pay at 1.5 times their regular rate. I had been classified as part-time, regardless of the hours I actually worked. I pulled my own timesheets, which I had filed diligently for 4 years because I was the one who set up the timekeeping system and calculated the gap. The number was not small. The second thing I found was in the equipment leasing records for the Gahanna location. My father had been reporting lease payments on a commercial pressing machine to a company called Hartwell Industrial Solutions. I had always processed those payments without question. When I looked up Hartwell Industrial Solutions in the Ohio Business Registry, I found that it had been registered 18 months ago with one listed officer, my father's brother, a man I had met exactly twice at holiday gatherings. The payments ran $3,200 a month. I cross-referenced the actual lease market rate for comparable equipment. The going rate was under $800. He was paying his brother $2,400 a month above market rate through a shell company and writing it off as a business expense. I am not a forensic accountant by training. But I had filed 4 years of quarterly returns and I understood exactly what I was looking at. I did not touch any records. I did not move any files or alter anything. I copied. I photographed. I exported. I built a digital file on my personal encrypted drive that contained 4 years of payroll records, the equipment lease anomalies, the bank statements, and the email thread. I organized it into folders with dates and cross-references. On the last Friday of that month, I told my father I needed to leave a bit early for a personal appointment. He waved me off without looking up from his phone. I drove to the Ohio Department of Commerce. I filed a wage complaint for unpaid overtime. Then I drove to the parking lot of a Panera Bread, sat in my car, and called a labor attorney whose number I had saved in my phone 3 weeks earlier under the name Dentist. Her name was Carol. She had been doing wage and employment cases for 19 years. I explained the situation. She was quiet for a moment after I finished. "Do you have documentation of your actual hours?" she asked. 4 years of timesheets, I said. "Filed in the company system. I set up the system." Another pause. "And the equipment lease irregularity, do you have the registry documentation and the market rate comparables?" "In a folder," I said. "Organized by quarter." She exhaled slowly. "Leah," she said, "I need you to come into the office." I also called the IRS tip line. I want to be precise about this. I did not call out of anger. I called because I had an obligation. When you have documented evidence of tax fraud, sitting on it is not neutral. I reported what I had found about Hartwell Industrial Solutions and the inflated lease payments. I provided the documentation I had copied. I gave them 4 years of quarterly returns with my name on them as the preparer returns I had filed accurately for the income I could see, but which I now understood were built on a foundation my father had deliberately kept out of my view. That last part is important. My father had been careful. He had given me exactly enough access to do my job and not enough to see the full picture. But 4 years of doing the job meant I had assembled the full picture anyway, piece by piece, without realizing it, the way you don't notice a mosaic until you step back far enough to see the image. 3 weeks after I met with Carol, my father called me into the Westerville office and closed the door. He sat down across from me with a manila envelope and the practiced neutrality of a man who has rehearsed what he is about to say. "We want to talk to you about the future of your role here," he said. "With Marcus coming on board and the business evolving, we think it makes sense to restructure. We want to offer you a transition package." He slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it. Inside was a separation agreement, a general release of all claims, and a check for $4,000. $4,000. For 4 years. I looked at the release language. It was written to cover wage claims, benefits claims, and any other employment-related grievances. Someone had paid an attorney to write it. The attorney had not been thorough, there was no mention of whistleblower protections, and the release language contained a specific carve-out that made it unenforceable against government agency filings already in progress. I know this because Carol had explained exactly what to look for. I picked up the check. I looked at my father. "I need a few days to review this," I said. He nodded, visibly relieved. "Of course. Take your time. This is all very amicable, Leah. We just want what's best for everyone." I put the check in the envelope. I put the envelope in my bag. I thanked him for his time. That evening, I went back to my apartment, the apartment I had 30 days to vacate, and I finished packing the last of what mattered. My books, my records, the framed print from my college graduation, the kitchen shelves I had built myself. I had been packing quietly for 2 weeks, taking things out a few boxes at a time so no one would notice. I had already signed a lease on a 1-bedroom in a neighborhood I had chosen entirely for myself. In a building with an elevator and a gym, and no family history attached to any of its walls. I left the apartment key on the kitchen counter. Next to it, I left the separation agreement, and the check unsigned and uncashed. On top of the check, I placed a sticky note. 5 words. "My attorney will be in touch." I walked out and did not look back. What happened over the next 4 months was not dramatic in the way my father's world had always been dramatic, loud, public, performed for an audience. It was quiet. It was procedural. It was the specific, grinding, unglamorous machinery of accountability doing exactly what it is designed to do. Carol filed the wage claim in civil court. The timesheets I had provided documented 2,341 hours of overtime across 4 years. At time and a half on $14 an hour, the calculation was not complicated. My father's attorney initially pushed back, arguing that I had been a salaried exempt employee. Carol produced the original offer verbal, but corroborated by 4 years of hourly timesheets my father's own system had generated. The case did not go to trial. It settled. I also called Marcus directly, before any of it became public. I want to be honest about why. It was not kindness. It was strategy. Marcus had no knowledge of the Hartwell lease arrangement. I was confident of that from the email thread, which showed he had only been involved in discussions about my role, not the financials. Giving him the opportunity to distance himself before the IRS inquiry became a formal investigation was a courtesy that cost me nothing and bought me his silence about the settlement negotiations. He and Olivia quietly moved the wedding date back by 8 months. I do not know what he told her. The IRS examination of Hartwell Industrial Solutions took 6 months. These things move slowly. My father had built the arrangement carefully enough that proving intent required tracing 3 years of transactions through 2 related party companies. I cooperated fully with the examination and provided every document I had. I also, on Carol's advice, formally disclosed my role as preparer of the returns and provided a detailed written account of what information had and had not been available to me when I filed them. My father retained a tax attorney. The legal fees alone, Carol estimated, would run 6 figures before it was resolved. The Gahanna location had to be sold to cover them. My uncle's arrangement with Hartwell was unwound. The back taxes, penalties, and interest were assessed and paid. No criminal charges were filed, which was a decision that had nothing to do with me. I was not in the room for any of it. I was not there when my father got the IRS notice. I was not there when he had to explain it to my mother, or to Marcus, or to the people at his country club. I heard, through a mutual acquaintance, that he had been very pale at a church event the week the story circulated among his social circle. I heard that my mother told people it was a misunderstanding. I heard that Olivia posted nothing on social media for about 3 months, which for her was the equivalent of going dark. I was not paying close attention. I was busy. The wage settlement was $184,000. I want to say that number out loud because it matters. $184,000 for 2,341 hours that my own father had quietly stolen from me, year after year. While calling it family, I used part of it to clear the remaining balance on my student loans. I used another part as a deposit on the commercial lease for a small office in Dublin, Ohio. Clean lines, good light, a conference room that holds 8 people. I registered the business in November. Leah Mercer Business Consulting. I had 3 clients by February, all referrals from Carol, who apparently tells every small business owner she meets that they need a competent bookkeeper who also understands employment law. I am telling you this not because I want to seem extraordinary. I am not extraordinary. I am a 30-year-old woman with a business degree, a tolerance for spreadsheets, and 4 years of experience I did not realize I was acquiring until I needed to use it as something other than free labor. The last time I saw my father was at a family obligation. Neither of us could reasonably avoid my grandmother's 80th birthday, held at a restaurant in Bexley on a Sunday afternoon in March. He was thinner. He looked like a man who had spent several months being reminded that the rules apply to him. He did not bring up the settlement. He did not bring up the IRS. He did not bring up the apartment or Marcus or any of it. He talked about the weather and asked how my business was going. Very well, I said. My grandmother pulled me aside near the end of the evening. She is 80 years old and sharper than anyone in our family has ever given her credit for. She took my hand in both of hers and looked at me with the particular directness of someone who has watched human behavior long enough to have no remaining patience for performance. I know more than they think I do, she said. I always have. I squeezed her hand. I know, Grandma, I said. She nodded once, satisfied, and let me go. I drove home to my apartment, chosen by me, paid for by me, decorated entirely according to my own preferences with no family discount attached to it and no obligation folded inside the lease. I poured a glass of wine. I sat on the couch I had picked out myself. The city was quiet outside the window. There are people in your life who look at you and see what you cost them. They calculate your usefulness, and when you stop being cheap enough to keep, they start looking for the exit. My father did not think of himself as that kind of person. I genuinely believe that. He thought he was a good man who had made some practical decisions. He thought the email about carrying me and the transition plan and the $4,000 check were simply business. He thought family and business were 2 separate categories and he had managed to keep them that way. He was wrong about all of it. The people who actually see you, who see the work you do, and the hours you put in and the parts of yourself you fold up small to fit inside someone else's vision of what you should be. Those people are not always the ones who share your last name. Sometimes they are a labor attorney who calls you back within the hour. Sometimes they are a grandmother who has always been paying attention. Sometimes they are the version of yourself you finally meet when there is no one left to perform for. I kept the sticky note. It is in a small frame on my desk, next to my business license and a photo of the office on the day we opened. 5 words, written in my own handwriting on a yellow square that once sat on top of an uncashed check that represented everything my family thought I was worth. My attorney will be in touch. She was.